Welcome to Crypto 101, a first principles jargon-free course on blockchain and its impact on financial services. We are in the process of learning how cryptocurrencies mimic the properties of fiat money. In the previous lesson, we took a brief detour to learn about wallets. In this lesson, we will go back to the thread on the four properties of fiat money. In this lesson, we will begin learning how cryptocurrency is transferred from one account to another. Specifically, we will learn about the three steps of a payment, namely initiation, authentication and value transfer. We will then learn about an important concept in cryptocurrency payments called unspent transaction outputs. We will conclude with a deep dive on the initiation step of payments. So far in this course, we have been learning about how cryptocurrencies mimic the four properties of currency. The properties that we discussed so far are segregated accounts and account security. In this lesson, we will learn how cryptocurrencies are transferred between one account to another. Three steps occur in fiat money payments. First, the user initiates a payment. In the fiat money world, payments can be initiated by a variety of methods including online banking, checks and cards. Second, the payment is authenticated. This means that the identity of the individual and sufficiency of funds is validated. Finally, the value is transferred from the source account to the destination account. In this and next few lessons, we will learn how these steps occur in cryptocurrencies and how they compare with fiat money payments. Before we delve into the three steps of crypto payments, we will analyze a crypto payment that has already been made. Imagine explaining the check payment process to a digital native individual who has never seen a check in her life. Hence, visualizing the output makes it easier to understand the process that resulted in the output. Consider Alice, who has a bank account with a zero balance. She receives $3 payments of $100, $200 and $300. Her bank balance increases to $500. Now she pays $50 to Bob. Which of the three incoming payments did the $50 come out of? This question makes no sense in the digital version of fiat money. Unlike currency notes, in digital bank money, you pay from the outstanding balance. But in Bitcoin payments, you actually have to link an outgoing payment with an incoming payment. Next, we will see a real Bitcoin payment record to understand how this works. Let us go back to my wallet. In my Bitcoin wallet, I can see that I received one payment and made one payment. I copied the transaction identifier of the outbound payment and pasted it to the Bitcoin Blockchain Explorer. Next, we will carefully dissect the payment on the Blockchain Explorer. What you see on the top is a unique transaction identifier on the blockchain. This is called the transaction hash and derived by applying a hash algorithm to the transaction details. The transaction hash is similar to, though not identical to, digital signatures. The digital signature incorporates both private key and transaction details, whereas the transaction hash is derived from transaction details only. While the Bitcoin Blockchain Explorer allows us to view only the transaction hash, the digital signature does exist in the underlying data. It is generated by the wallet, behind the scenes, at the time of making the payment. Next, we will explore the amount seen in this transaction. The amount you see on the left is the payment that had come in. You can see that the inward payment is labeled as output, which is somewhat confusing. We will cover this anomaly shortly. The blockchain address you see on the left is the source from which I paid. On the right side, the first entry is the outbound payment I made. The blockchain address you see here is the destination address to which I sent money. The balance is the unspent amount. The destination address you see here is also owned by me. The unspent amount is being sent back to me. It is equivalent to the change we get when we pay a merchant a currency note. In this case, the change is being returned to a different address than the source from which I paid. But it does not matter since I own both addresses. This brings us to an important concept in cryptocurrencies called unspent transaction outputs, or UTXOs. These are the portions of incoming payments that are unspent. Say Alice receives two payments of $5 and $10 respectively. She spends $3 from the 5 and $4 from the 10. Hence, the UTXOs in her account are $2 and $6 respectively. She can use these UTXOs for making payments. You may be wondering if she needed to spend $1, which UTXO should be used. The answer is, it is up to her. Just as you can choose the currency note in your wallet. From an accounting point of view, it doesn't matter. The Bitcoin blockchain records transactions and not balances. You might wonder how, then, we can see the outstanding Bitcoin balance on my wallet. It is simply a calculation done by the wallet software. Wallet software calculates the net outstanding balance associated with a blockchain address by tabulating the ins and outs associated with a blockchain address. Going back to our payment, let us take the UTXO that was spent on the left and see what happened to it. It is difficult to follow these very small numbers. Hence, I will convert the values to USD. Next, we will check whether the left and right tally. We are now checking whether the UXO on the left adds up to the right. There are two subcomponents on the right. First, we see the spent amount. Below that we see the unspent amount. The unspent amount is the UTXO for a future payment. Adding the spent and the unspent only yields $4.10. But the original UTXO was $4.46. The missing 36 cents is the fees on top. We can now compare the UTXO on the left with its allocations on the right. Part 1 was sent to the recipient. Part 2 was the fees that I paid. Part 3 was the change I got back. The allocations match the UTXO, with a small 1 penny rounding error on the Block Explorer view that we saw previously. In Bitcoin payments, the UXO and its allocations always match. Next, we will look at the fees that we paid. Let us look at the fees more closely. The amount I paid to the third party was $1.78. The fees I paid was 36 cents. Thus, the fees was 20% of the amount I paid. While this seems very high, one must also consider the small payment amount. For example, wire transfer fee in the United States is at least $25. Hence, if we made a payment of $100 by wire transfer, that would equate to 25%. Obviously, in real life, we will not make a wire transfer for such a small amount. You may be curious as to how this fees is determined and whom it is paid to. We will cover the fees associated with crypto payments in a later lesson. Now that we have seen what a crypto payment transaction looks like, we will go back to the 3 steps through which that payment was made. In this lesson, we will learn about how payments are initiated in the world of fiat money. Then, we will explore how payment initiation occurs in cryptocurrency. Initiation is the process by which a payer declares her intent to pay and shares the required information with the paying bank. Before we get to initiation of crypto payments, we will first review how the process works in fiat money. Consider Alice who wants to make a fiat money payment. For the payment to be initiated, 3 components must exist. First, there must exist a source bank account that contains fiat money. Second, Alice must have an instrument of initiation by which she can declare her intention to make a payment. An example of such an instrument could be a debit card. Third, Alice's intention to make a payment must be communicated to her bank. Hence, there must be connectivity between the instrument of initiation and the paying bank at the point of sale. Otherwise, the bank wouldn't know that Alice wants to make a payment. Next, we will deconstruct these 3 components. In fiat money, the value to be transferred is held in a bank account. The bank account could belong to the payer. Alternately, it could be a commingled bank account. An example of this is a bank account that commingles customer funds of a digital wallet provider. When you see a balance stored on your digital wallet, it represents your share of the money held in this commingled bank account. Finally, it could be a bank account held by a lender like a credit card issuing bank or a buy now pay later lender. The instrument of initiation refers to the instrument by which we instruct our bank to make a payment on our behalf. The instrument can be embodied in a physical form. This includes card-based instruments, that are also used in virtual forms in websites and apps. Physical instruments also include paper instruments like checks and money orders. Alternately, payment instruments can be completely digital. Examples include online banking and direct debits. Another example is bank account-based payments at e-commerce checkout without the use of debit cards. An example of this is the Unified Payment Interface or UPI in India. The instrument of initiation allows the payer to communicate 2 types of information to the paying bank. These are payment information and credentials information. Next, we will look at each one. Payment information refers to information such as amount, intended date of transfer, beneficiary information. Sometimes, the payer enters the information manually. For instance, while writing a check. At other times, the information may be wholly or partly prepopulated by the beneficiary. For instance, when we swipe our card, the card reader contains the intelligence on the receiving bank account of the beneficiary. Credential information refers to information like usernames, passwords, PINs. Sometimes we enter the credential information prior to the payment information. For instance, when we log into our online banking account and initiate a payment. Sometimes, we enter the credential information after entering the payment information. For instance, when we enter our PIN with our debit card. Most of us would sign a check only after putting in the payment details and not before. Alice declares her intention to make a payment. She could declare her intention to make a payment through any of these instruments of instruction. She writes a check. She swipes a credit or debit card. She dips her debit card into an ATM machine to pay herself. She enters her card details on an app or website. She creates a payment transaction in her online banking portal. But her intention needs to be communicated to the bank where the source account is held. Next, we will see how this occurs. There are broadly three methods by which Alice's intention to make a payment is communicated to her bank. These are manual, digital direct, and digital indirect. Next, we will learn what these mean. In the manual mode, the intention of the payer to make payment is communicated to the paying bank via a physical, non-digital channel. The most common example of this is a paper check that is physically presented to the paying bank by the beneficiary. In the digital direct mode, Alice's intention to make a payment is directed digitally to the paying bank without any intermediary. An example is when Alice logs into her online portal. Or Alice makes a payment to herself by using her bank's ATM. In both these examples, Alice is operating within her bank's own systems. In the digital indirect mode, the intention of the payer to make a payment is digitally communicated to the paying bank via one or more third parties. In such cases, the request to initiate a payment is usually first recorded by a merchant, who then forwards the request to the paying bank. The reason we are calling this mode indirect is because there are one or more middlemen between the payer and the paying bank. Next, we will see some examples. The merchant forwards the payer's request to the paying bank in two common ways. 1. The merchant could rely on card network operators like Visa and MasterCard. The merchant, in this case, could even be a third-party ATM operator, who forwards the cash payment request to the payer's bank via an ATM network operator. 2. The merchant could connect to the source without usage of card networks. For instance, digital wallet providers offer APIs by which bank accounts can be accessed. When we use store credit cards at a department store, the merchant and the credit card issuing bank are often directly connected. Another example is a direct debit request forwarded by a utility company to our bank. This brings us to an end on the discussion of payment initiation in fiat money. Next, we will learn how this step works in cryptocurrencies. To replicate the initiation process in crypto, the same three components need to be there. There must be an account where the value is held. We already know that the value is held within a blockchain address. There must be an instrument by which Alice can declare her intention to make the payment. She must be able to enter payment details as well as credential information. Finally, there must be connectivity between the Alice and the blockchain network where the value is held. Since we have already covered blockchain addresses in depth, we will move on to the instrument of initiation. We earlier saw that we can use the wallet as an instrument to initiate payments from a specified blockchain address. We go to the place where we can see the wallet balance and initiate a payment from there. Thus, the wallet, here, acts similar to an online banking portal. We saw that the wallet can serve as an instrument of initiation. But what about debit cards that are linked to the blockchain address? How about credit cards that are linked to blockchain addresses owned by a lender? We could directly debit that blockchain address at e-commerce checkout counters. While there could be procedural and regulatory hurdles in making some of this happen, this is all technically feasible. Just like payment initiation in fiat money, two types of information must be input for the payment to occur. 1. Information related to the payment itself. This includes the destination blockchain address and the payment amount. 2. Credential information needs to be input. The private key input at the time of payment initiation creates a digital signature. While the private key remains secret, the resulting digital signature is public. In the previous lesson, we saw some addresses and private keys. The screenshot here obfuscates the identifiers for privacy reasons. The central learning here is that knowledge of the private key is essential to prove ownership of a blockchain address. When a user initiates a payment from a software wallet installed on desktop or mobile, the output is an unsigned payment message. The wallet software may either store the private key on the same hardware on which the software is installed or on a separate hardware wallet. In either case, the output is payment message with a digital signature. It is then transmitted to the blockchain network. Step 1 and Step 2 does not require connectivity to the internet. Only the final step does. We now get to the third component required for the payment to be initiated. The declaration of the payer's intent must be transmitted from the instrument of initiation to the blockchain network. If Alice simply creates a payment message with a digital signature, it is like writing a check and placing it in one's drawer. Alice has two options by which she can connect to the blockchain network: the direct approach and the intermediated approach. Next, we will see what these approaches mean. In the direct approach, Alice can run a node on the blockchain network. She needs to download a software on her computer and ensure that the computer meets the hardware configuration requirements of the network. Once connected to the network, Alice can make payments to any blockchain address associated with the network. The software program that most people use to run a Bitcoin node is called Bitcoin Core. This software becomes the instrument of initiation for Alice. Alice can go further and pair her Bitcoin node with a hardware wallet. This way she does not need to store her private keys on the node. In the previous lesson, we saw how a user can pair a software wallet with a hardware wallet. The same concept applies here, except that the Bitcoin node is paired with the hardware wallet. Alice initiates the payment from the node, sends the payment message to the hardware wallet and gets it back with a digital signature. Running a node on a blockchain network requires a relatively high level of technical proficiency. Hence, an intermediary like a wallet company can run a node and act as the user interface layer for end consumers. Going a step further, even the wallet company may rely on a third-party node for interfacing with the blockchain network. Given the open nature of the blockchain, users can easily connect to the network via APIs. Whether the approach used is direct or intermediated, we can now see how connecting to the blockchain network is different from connecting to the paying bank. Connecting to the paying bank is subject to consent by the bank. The consent is given to customers via mechanisms like issuance of cards, checkbooks, direct debit mandates, and online banking credentials. Without these bank-issued instruments, we cannot send a payment message to the paying bank. On the other hand, the blockchain network is open access. Anyone can send payment messages to the network. Of course, whether the payment message will result in transfer of value depends on the validity of the digital signature. The output of the payment initiation step is a payment transaction message that consists of payment details and the payer's digital signature. We will learn what happens after the message is sent to the network in the upcoming lesson on payment authentication. In this lesson, we covered the initiation step of a payment. In the next lesson, we will complete the discussion on initiation by a brief discussion on managing private keys, which are necessary for payment initiation. Next, review the summary of this lesson, after which you can proceed to the next lesson.